Okay.
All right. I'll call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Dunsmuir for March 16, 2023. We'll now rise for the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, we'll move into roll call.
Councilmember Clarno.
Here.
Councilmember Bryan.
Present.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Present.
Councilmember Keisler.
Here.
And Mayor Lucchese.
Here. Thank you. We'll now move into item number 3 of our agenda, which is special presentations and announcements. And we do have 2 tonight. First is we have a moment of silence in honor of Pam Padula. I don't know if any of my fellow council members would like to say anything before we go into that moment of silence.
If I could, I'd like to ask everybody to rise just for a moment. She was a daughter of Dunsmuir, and she was a friend to a lot of us. So please join me. That's for you, girl. Go in peace. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We'll now move to our second announcement for the evening, which is the First 5 Siskiyou Proclamation Against Child Abuse. And so we'll have you come up and please give a short presentation, and then we will read off the, are you going to read the proclamation, or would you like me to?
I can, and you could sign it.
Okay,
how is that? So if anybody wants some packets, there's a lot of things for kids, information for Kids Fair. So April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so it's all about celebrating kids and their innocence and all the beauty that they bring to us and how to keep them safe. And so there's some information in these packets about that. And this proclamation is a collaborative proclamation. So it's First 5 Siskiyou, but it's also Siskiyou Domestic Violence and Crisis Center. She collaborated on it. You'll see her logo on here. So that was the executive director, Carla Sharaga. Here it is, April 2023, whereas children are vital to Siskiyou County's prosperity and future success, whereas child abuse, rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment impact our society, whereas all children deserve to live in safe, stable, and nurturing homes and communities to become healthy adults, whereas child abuse, neglect, and sexual assault prevention is a community responsibility affecting both the current and future generations, whereas research has shown that the enormous impact that positive parenting practices can have on a child's social, emotional, and intellectual development and future success, whereas communities that understand the importance of prevention and support for the well-being of children thrive and prosper, whereas effective child abuse and sexual assault prevention succeed because of partnerships among citizens and all sectors of the county, whereas April is the month to focus public attention on the needs of young children and prevention of sexual assault. Whereas with leadership, dedication, and encouragement, there is evidence that we can be successful in preventing child abuse and sexual violence in Siskiyou County. Therefore, we hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention and Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as April 15th and 21st, 2023 as Week of the Young Child. That's a national campaign. We call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, elected leaders, and businesses to increase their participation in efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening families in the communities in which we serve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I do have a signed copy for it.
Okay,
You should sign that. Somebody should take a picture for the newspaper. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm behind you.
Yeah, and the resource centers are funded by First 5 Siskiyou, and there's parenting classes and there's playgroups, all kinds of playgroups, fun things for kids to do. And so there's also lots of interesting trainings that are interesting for professionals to help kids, and also just interesting as a person to develop oneself. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, that closes our special presentations and announcements for the evening. So we'll move into item number 4, which is our general public comment time. This is time in our meeting set aside for speakers who would like to speak on items that are not on our agenda. If you would like to speak to any of our special presentations we had tonight, or if you would like to comment on our consent agenda. So tonight we have 3 items on the consent agenda, which is item A, check register for February 11th through March 10th, 2023. B, the proclamation against child abuse that you've just heard. C, report of water discharge change order of $10,000. And I think for the consent agenda, if we can just make a note that we'll need to have a roll call vote because there is expenditure in there. It's just a reminder there. So if you'd like to comment on any of those 3 items that I have just stated, or if you'd like to comment on an item not on the agenda or about our special presentations, you may come to the podium. We do request that you state your name for the record, although it is optional, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Is this for new business?
This is for items that are not on the agenda. So any items that are in old business or new business, there will be public comment related to those later.
So if you meant new business is in something that you want to bring to our attention,
Yeah.
now would be the time.
Yes.
Peter Arth, 5859 Dunsmuir Avenue. I hope to have the council focus 3 minutes on the potential that Dunsmuir and Siskiyou County could suffer another catastrophic derailment on the lines now run by Union Pacific. Certainly all of you are well informed on the 1991 spill that decimated the economy of Dunsmuir, sterilized the upper Sacramento River all the way down to Lake Shasta. And now we have any number of lines, most notoriously Norfolk and Southern, but other lines as well, that are experiencing derailments, toxic spills. And the lesson to me is once the damage is done from a toxic spill, you can't undo it. You can't. No amount of money will undo it. So I think it's incumbent on this city to have Union Pacific participate in a public hearing that will include the Office of Emergency Services at the state level, the Siskiyou County Emergency Response Team, our own DPAC committee, with the notion, is Union Pacific operating differently from Norfolk and Southern and the other major lines? Are the trains getting longer, the consists? Are the trains carrying toxic and hazardous materials every day through our downtown, right on those tracks? Are the crew requirements relaxed? Are there fewer crew or more crew? If the worst happens, are we ready? And everything we learned from East Palestine and Norfolk and Southern and spills north of us is the answer is no, no, no. We have a very small time to react were there to be another Kantara Loop spill. When Councilmember Bryan was mayor, we went up on a Sunday morning to see 17 cars that derailed on Kantara Loop. So what is the history over the last 10 years? More derails, less derails. Norfolk and Southern is pledged in trying to make things right. They have a 6-point plan to improve, to diminish the likelihood of another tragic spill. Is Union Pacific doing a 6-point plan? They seem to be notoriously slow in responding to any inquiries from cities like Dunsmuir. Is that okay with you guys? You don't want a spill to happen on your watch. I urge you to have a hearing and take action. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Jeannie Baker. I'm here tonight representing approximately 400 people in our town. And we are asking the council and the city to take some of the community development block grant money to put towards a complimentary snow removal program for our seniors and disabled. Mount Shasta had a really good program. They simply gave the money to Great Northern, who managed all the hiring and paying of the independent snow removal operators. This would fall under the Community Development Block Grant Program service sector. So the money is there and it's available. We just need to designate it. When we look at some of the statistics of Dunsmuir, we have 20% of our population are seniors. 35% of those seniors live alone. 18% are veterans, possibly disabled as well. The average income for the seniors in this town is between $1,500 and $2,000 a month. They really don't have any extra money to spend hundreds of dollars on snow removal. In this last situation, we had people in real trouble. They couldn't get out for life-saving cancer treatments, critical medicine, and doctor appointments. This program will also provide relief for our overworked, stressed out public works workers and crew. Now, I like our public workers and the crew. I get along with them just fine. I did have a casual civil conversation with one of them during the crisis, and this is a direct quote. He said to me, "You can tell the seniors that if they don't like it, they can just move. They can just move." I'm not going to give his name right now. However, I do want to say that this shows the amount of stress they're under. I don't think this actually reflects how they feel. It's just during critical weather conditions like that, that's the kind of stress that they're demonstrating. I personally don't want to see 20% of our population move. I prefer that we help people. Many of you know this. I have a local food program and other things that I help people with. I'm suggesting to our council and city to take action by forming a committee immediately to study the feasibility and how and when we can implement this program. It's easy. Great Northern will take care of all the hiring, all the paying. All we have to do is take a little bit of our community development block grant money to apply to this type of program. And there is room there under service.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so
I'm
I'm
sorry,
asking,
that's your time.
yeah. So anyway, I have had home here for a long time.
Again,
I
that
love
is-
and
that
care
is
about
your
the
time.
people
Please
in this
sit down.
community, and I hope that you will reflect.
I will
the same
excuse you
feelings.
from this meeting, please.
I'm leaving anyway.
Thank
So I'm
you.
just asking.
That
you to
is your
reflect the
time,
same-
ma'am.
I'm
You
asking
can
you
use.
to reflect the same feeling of loving and caring.
We're
for
gonna
our
now
community.
recess for
Thank
5
you.
minutes. If this
Thank you.
continues, we will
Let's go.
end.
Let's see if they do anything. Get 400 people in the community.
All right.
Please don't forget our administrator. She more respect.
All right.
Follow that.
Hi, my name is Garrett Ball. I own Blaze One, 5986 Dunsmuir Avenue. I'm here today to ask for an amendment to the current cannabis ordinance and resolution to allow for, number one, a cannabis event license, which is one of the licenses offered by the state, which just, from my understanding, was just kind of passed over because the committee at the time didn't think it was something they needed to deal with, or it wasn't important enough. But it's something that would definitely help us bring some music to the area and have a compliant event. The events are set up much like a beer tent, so it's hidden. It's not going to produce anything other than what a beer garden would, as far as people going inside. As you know, you're not going to be able to see them. The second thing is an on-site consumption at the 5986 Dunsmuir Avenue. It would be limited access for 21 and over. It would have full air scrubbers and adherence to all state requirements. No consumption would be visible or detectable by the public. This is another license offered by the state, which Dunsmuir currently doesn't offer. So those are the two things I'd like to get on the agenda to amend and the ordinance or resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarification questions, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
When you're saying like having a smoke room, right, Garrett?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'll talk more about that.
well, the other ones have it, so yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you,
Derek reached out ahead of time, so I've talked to.
right on.
All right, are there any other comments? For those of you on Zoom, you can go to the bottom toolbar and there's a reactions key. You may raise your hand in that reactions section if you would like to make a comment on an item not on the agenda regarding our presentations tonight or on our consent agenda. Are there any speakers online that would like to have 3 minutes? All right,
Mayor Lucchese, I did receive a letter. Did you want me to read it?
yes, please.
And this is from Jim and Elaine Cook. Dear Dunsmuir City Council members, we ask that the following be read during public comment at a regular meeting of the City Council. We would like to thank all the City Public Works staff who keep the city functioning during our recent and continuing snowstorms. And we would especially like to thank the snow removal team for keeping our roads clear. We know what it is to operate heavy machinery and even pickup trucks with blades for so many days. Again, thanks to the snow removal team, and we also urge Dunsmuir City Council to resolve publicly to thank the Public Works Department and the snow removal team. Sincerely, Jim and Elaine Cook.
Thank you. All right, are there any other members of the public who'd like to give a general public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close general public comment and move into council and staff member comments. I will just make a quick statement before we go to our city manager and then to the sheriff's officers. Please be respectful of our time. I am respectful of your time. We give everybody time. People can reach out to us ahead of time. We appreciate that. And so that is why I like to keep a little bit stricter order here, is it's just respect for everybody's time. So I'm gonna go over to the city manager, Dustin Reef.
So over the past, I don't even know how many days it's been, since essentially the 24th of February, we have been in pretty much nonstop snow removal, as some of the public comments have stated, and the guys have put in, and gals, I mean, we put in a lot of hours. The first, I don't know, I'll know at the end of the week after Brian's finally done snow plowing, hopefully tomorrow. I think he's here in the audience, and I would like to thank all of them and for everything they've done. We put in, we're probably in the neighborhood of 700 hours. Since
700 hours.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Shit. You guys do an awesome job, thank you.
So some of the challenges we've had related to getting vehicles moved and stuff like that, it's been, some of the streets have been pretty substantially challenged by blocked vehicles blocking. I don't know how many we ended up towing, but there was quite a few that sat for, I mean, some in excess of 8 to 9 days with no movement. And so some of that stuff we'll bring forward when we do discuss the snow removal policy, hopefully in the next month or two. And other than that, the other thing I have to discuss is on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Do we have public works building on the agenda?
Yes.
Do we have any questions for city manager at this time? Seeing none, we'll move over to Sergeant Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. For the month of February, the city of Dunsmuir has contracted 5,280 hours of full-time for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. As of this date, 4,033 hours have been completed. 58% of the year's gone by. We're at 76% of the contracted hours. That being said, that's just hours. We're not like a cell phone plan. We will still be here. I've passed your message for your request to the sheriff. I'm but a lowly sergeant. So.
Is he back from training?
Well, I was the one that was at training.
Oh, okay.
My
so
brain's much bigger now.
Okay.
So,
okay, great.
as far as I know, he's here. So we had 402 hours for the city of Dunsmuir in February. We had 124 calls for service. We're down a little bit. I think it's mostly the snow. Last year we had 169. We had 14 cases. 4 citations were issued, 2 traffic, and 2 were for misdemeanor site release warrants. We did have 1 felony arrest and 3 misdemeanors booked. Our proactivity was lower for the month of February, and again, I think it's our stats for out with suspicious people or out with vehicles. I think it was because of the old school snow that we finally got back. Everything was kind of at a standstill. There were no alarming trades. We did have 10 traffic stops and only 2 citations issued. I think I'm comfortable with that. I think that's a good ratio of warnings as opposed to stubbing them with a citation and costing them money. Voluntary compliance is what we're ultimately after. So I'm happy with that ratio. They did do several security checks, school checks, welfare checks over the course of the snow. The notable incidents in a lot of cities, we need to make conversation at coffee, so that's a good thing. We want to be a little bit boring when it comes to crime. We had 1 stolen vehicle on the 6500 block of Dunsmuir Avenue. The vehicle has since been recovered. It was suspected a family member had stolen it. We had an adult male that took up residency in the utility shed at the cemetery. He had been stealing power. Charges have been filed or requested with the district attorney's office, and after a brief wrestling match, he went to jail. And there was a man reported as unresponsive at the Dunsmuir post office, and it wound up he was just super drunk. So he went to jail also, where he could be safer.
You just had to get that letter out.
It was critical to him. Yeah, I walked in and I was like, I think he's probably drunk with that bottle of vodka laying next to him. You know,
Oh,
he woke right up.
no. Oh, good.
He's probably doing great now.
I heard there was a string of car break-ins. I forget what street it was on.
The north end up there.
Yeah.
I've been out of town, Bruce, the last few weeks. Still
Well, that's
looking into
why.
that. That's exactly why. So, we have upped our patrols in town, and in particular in that area.
No, I'm not complaining about that. I was just wondering where you were able to get any kind of lead on what that was or nail it down anyway.
I can circle back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine.
I just don't have the info with me.
That's fine.
Yeah, you said 5,280 service hours.
Yes, sir.
That's a mile of service hours.
You have to look at it like we go the extra mile.
Yeah, that was good, that was
Do you have
good.
any questions for Sergeant Ortiz? No, thank you so much, and I'll be in contact. I saw the sheriff's email about someone was at training, and so I was waiting, and so I will reach back out to you and schedule a meeting.
Awesome.
So thank you. All right, we'll come back to council comments. We'll start on this end with council member, or I should say, vice mayor.
First off, I'd just like to thank the city staff for all their hard work during snow removal. Not only that, but I'd also like to thank the sheriff, CHP, and Caltrans for working really hard, keeping the freeway open, keeping people safe just while all that snow is coming down. I'd also like to thank a lot of the city business owners. I don't know how many of them are in the audience. I know there's 1 or 2 for keeping the businesses open. I know it's a lot of hard work during those big snow days to keep things moving, and also just the citizens for they put in a lot of work clearing out their own properties. I've been really sick the last couple weeks. It's not been fun. Other than that, I missed the last chamber meeting. But one thing they did reach out to me that they wanted me to check on while I was here is the status of the Vive broadband project, and if any updates, or if there's been any updates on that.
I am awaiting on attorney comment.
Okay.
So I will follow back up with them on probably Monday.
All right, sounds good. Looks like
Yeah, on that one, by the way, the first really good one for Railroad Days, June 12th, that we could find a way to get there by then. That would
Yeah.
help us, but understand that may not be possible.
I'll follow up with John. I'll see if I send it over to him, but I haven't heard back, so I'll follow up with him.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo everyone's thanks for snow removal, and just remind everyone to be patient. I grew up here, and in the 90s, early 2000s, as a kid and teenager, this was normal winter, every year. I don't think it's been well over 10 years since we've had this sort of consistent snow.
and our infrastructure and culture's changed since then to not be as resilient to it. So just be patient. We may not have another winter like this for another 10 years. Looking forward to what should be a reduced fire season in the summer. So if we just have the ultimate patience, we'll have a great summer. The incident in East Palestine, Ohio, certainly has had me thinking a great deal about the derailment as well. I want to really thank both city management, staff, and the Castle Rock Water Company for taking the initiative and sending out that statement. It was in the paper, I believe, a week ago. Really, it's where Dunsmuir's at. If we can take any further official action to either help voice our support officially for that town, it's in their efforts with railroad regulation, be happy to look into that. And then on the public comments, I am eager to revisit the cannabis code to look into both of those uses and perhaps clean it up in a number of other ways. I know Mayor Casey will have more insight into cannabis ordinance codes, but I want to also point out that we're very much behind on our budget development. We weren't able to do it last year because of lack of staff, city management. We're going to be on track for getting that done by the end of June this year for our new 2-year budget, but I'm hesitant to take on any other major projects or updates until we have that in firm ground. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, on the snow removal, I actually had talked about that with the Dunsmuir Community Care Team on Tuesday. And that's when I was made aware that the funding that came through Great Northern, that grant had gone away. But I started exploring it then and finding a way to go forward. So I'll be willing to take that on as a project there to find a way for next season that we have something in place.
That's excellent. The city manager and I have talked about that, I believe, last week, and we're talking about bringing that back with the snow removal discussion as a whole. So yeah, that would be great if you want to viewpoint on that one. That'd be excellent. Thank you. Sorry, continue.
Sure. With regards to the volunteer fair, we had our second meeting on Monday. We had a good turnout for that. We had about 10 people. And this is going to be taking place again on April 30th between 1 to 5. We've got about a dozen different organizations or so that'll be a part of it. We'll have tables for each one of those set up. We're talking about getting banners and everything so people can walk around and go to different tables and find out what different events are. The whole idea is that we're working on right now is to have each of these organizations identify the structure for their volunteers, what their needs are, difference between a committee member who has a big commitment, somebody showing up for one shift, et cetera. So we're working on putting that together. I'm also going to try and go through the Ford Family Institute to come up with funding, both for about $400 worth of snacks that we could have prepackaged for that, and people walk around, grab them. And then the other thing is that I'm looking to get a 6x9 postcard going out to everybody in town, every day, every door direct mail, promoting the event. And the goal for this is to try as best we can to replicate what Etna was able to do when they were able to one Saturday morning get about 80% of their population in for a visioning thing. So this is just meant to kind of start that up and try and get a whole new group of volunteers. We did have the Caltrans road charge program briefing. It was really star-crossed in the sense that the snow came and everything else came. We eventually were able, because we did working with Blake, come up with a Zoom link, so we were actually able to have the presentation go on, and we got about 4 or 5 questions and answers going on before the power went off on my computer, and that ended. I was able, they were able to go on, but the recording was no longer after that. But the bottom line is, if you go onto the city website, there is a link. I have to give a link to Wendy or to Blake, but there's a recording of it, and we'll put it on the website. And if you want to find out, the key thing about this program, if anyone's interested, I'll just make it very brief. They're looking at trying to get electric vehicles into the paying for road construction, like the way all the gas taxes do. But the bottom line is, if you're interested, if you're willing to put some little device in your car and drive around with it in your car for about 3 months, you might get $250 to do that. They're looking for people in this pilot program to drive around, and particularly being able to move from freeways to public roads to whatever is an analysis they'll be doing. So if you're interested, you can go right now to the website, city website, and there's a link to the road charge program for Caltrans, and you can get involved with that.
Bruce?
Yes.
Just a clarification on that. That's for any vehicle, right?
Yeah,
Not
that's
just
the whole
electric
idea
vehicles?
it's both sides. So gasoline, not just electric vehicles. So if it has to have that little ODM or whatever that thing
You're
is.
trying to get data.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all just data. That's all it is. Okay, and finally, the other thing is, I do want to bring this up. I was kind of excited at the LTC, the Local Transportation Commission meeting yesterday. I was asking about the idea that we've been talking about for a long time of finding a way to get fuel to the airport. And I actually called and talked to Carol Ford, and she reminded me of the idea of working something out with weed. So while I was at the LTC, I brought this up at the end of the meeting, and they immediately said, this isn't the county doing this. This is an FBO, a fixed base operator that's doing it. And so they put me in touch with that person to talk to him about maybe finding a way to, trade off on gas, et cetera. Well, it turns out that the company that is now the fixed base operator for the Weed Airport is called Valley Aviation, but it's run by Chad McFall from Mountain Medics. So there's already that connection, and I basically talked to him and said, hey, we'd number one like to find some way to get fuel, and number two, if you're interested, we might have a spot for you as a fixed base operator who could come in and then basically take over that aspect of it. The nice thing about selling gasoline there is that our rates include a certain surcharge in all gas that's pumped there. So we'd be able to pull in revenue just by the pumping of the fuel. So anyway, that is just a seed right now, but I saw that and took an opportunity, and we'll see how it pans out, talking with the committee and Dustin. Thank you.
Good. The fees are gonna increase now that I have fuel available.
No, if somebody wants to buy fuel, they go over to the fuel thing, just like you would go to a gas station, and everything that gets pumped into that airplane, we get a percentage of.
Yeah, it's called we have a flowage charge. So I believe it's like 10 cents a gallon or something.
Don't they pay us to land on the airport?
No, they don't.
No.
Oh, really? I
No.
thought we had a tie-down fee, it was like $8 or something.
Oh, yeah, like for a tie down, but if they're just landing and then
You
taking
take it
back
off?
off, then no.
We don't want that.
Okay, cool.
So,
Anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Crescent.
Okay, I got a list of stuff, but I'm gonna start back up at the top. I have to echo loudly what Mr. R said about these trains. It's kind of on us to make sure that we're looking out for the people. And I think that we need to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that all the players is playing right. There's a 99 car limit that came into pass after Canteras Loop. There's been a lot of things that have gone in since Canteras Loop, but we still got spills. And I happen to have the honor of being part of the other day, I don't know if people seen it on the news, but our water bottling plant gave some water to the other town where they had a spill, Palestine. Okay, and it was pretty cool because we sent the water. It's like, man, we feel your pain, we've been there. So I thought that was pretty cool. Mike Manuth from Channel 7 did a pretty good story, and he once again made Dunsmuir look pretty good. But I think that we should try and put some kind of meeting together to where we can ask them questions, and maybe they can just educate us, make me feel better, make us all feel a little bit better. That's just something. Okay, so I'm curious to see where this goes with you, Garrett. I cannot echo enough our city staff. I seen Dennis on the tractor. These guys have been out 28 days, 30 days. They've been night and day to go home, get a couple hours, come back and do it all again. This town has a lot of nurses and stuff that got to get up early and go to work. Their roads is clear for them. I mean, it's nice to know, for the most part. I mean, I got to shovel my own berm out. I hate that part of it, but that's part of it. That's just part of living up in the mountains with snow. I want to do a big shout out to Steve Pierce. This guy's gone above and beyond to help just about everybody. I think that's pretty cool. And he's working like 18 hours a day himself.
People don't know who he is. Who's he?
He's a little guy on the little tractor. He does snow removal, he does dirt removal during the summer, he's an equipment operator. He's got special equipment that doesn't hurt curbs and sidewalks, and he knows his stuff, so, he's my friend, he's a good man. And he's out there for everybody. He's a pastor. He's got the biggest heart that I've ever seen, and he goes the extra mile. Okay, we got an Easter egg hunt coming up. I don't know when, you gotta check with the Resource Center, and they're looking for volunteers to, if you wanna donate some money so we can get a bike for the raffle prizes. If you wanna donate some money so we can get more eggs and stuff, you know. And if you wanna show up and help hide the eggs and be a part of watching the smiles on the kids' faces, there ain't no, it's pretty awesome. So I encourage everybody to come out. This blue thing that she passed out, I encourage everybody to get one of these, and in it, it has a Kids Day Festival, Saturday, April 22nd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is pretty cool. They got bounce houses, face painting, they got refreshments. It's out in Weed at the park. This is something that all the communities come together with their kids, and they have a really good time. So I encourage everybody to check that out, maybe go do something to do. And then we got the Rotary Golf Tournament coming up here in April. If you got a business and you want to have a T sign put up, it's $50. Give me a check for the Rotary and your business card. We'll have signs made, but we're running out of time, so I encourage everybody to hurry up. And then I'm glad to see that your Caltrans meeting went real well, and that the volunteer fair had a good turnout. But then on another note, I was thinking that maybe we could get like a snow brigade.
That's what I was thinking about, but yeah.
You know, some of these youngsters that wouldn't mind going and giving a couple hours and help shoveling the senior citizens. I seen Facebook, they're not here for me to respond, but I seen Facebook where there was somebody that had to go to the doctor's office for his cancer treatment, and I personally shoveled that person. And Brian Wilson came by and cleaned up my mess, but we got them out so that they could go to the doctor. But I'm getting old, I'm getting slow, body parts are starting to hurt and fall apart. So if we could get a younger group of guys, maybe talk to the Rotary and get to interact or something, but just some way of servicing veterans. She said 18% of these people are veterans. Well, shit, we need to go shovel. So on that note, thank you for the time, and
Great, thank you. I'll try and keep mine brief. On the topic of snow removal, like I said, we will have an item coming back to the city council next month, if not the first meeting in May. It's already the end of March. And so that is part of the discussion. The city manager and I had brought up the need for some kind of senior assistant service. And so that will be part of that discussion and trying to get that together. I do have to shout out to everybody in the city. I had, out of all of those people, I'm not on social. You're unmuted. Please mute yourself. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to people. I had one person yell at me while I was shoveling out my berm about how terrible it was in the city, but for that one person, I had about 25 other people who were super thankful. There were at least 2 people going around in a pickup truck with snow blowers in the back, stopping and trying to help everybody, and that's just a really lovely thing to see. Neighbors helping each other and reaching out right now and filling that need. One of the individuals stopped to ask if I needed help, and I told him that I was okay, but to go help someone else. So that's just really lovely to see in the community that everybody's taking the opportunity to help each other. So, kudos to that, and kudos to the public works crew. I think, having to go up to Mount Shasta and see the job that they did, that was terrifying to drive through Mount Shasta. And so this was a much nicer system so far, even with one plow down and a dump truck.
Yeah, I wish it was only one plow.
Oh, no.
I think
Okay,
we
I
have-
won't bring it up. I'm sorry. I ripped a Band-Aid. So going back, so thank you so much. I know it's been a really tough season for that. And then also getting ready for the floods. I spent most of my Saturday getting documentation together just in case we did have to declare a disaster for flooding, getting that information together, trying to get the county on board to communicate a little bit better. Still working on that front. Thank you to Garrett for coming in. We did receive your email, and I did send that over to our contract planner, Rico Tinsman, and he and I both agree that it's probably about time to pop that thing open. The big issue that we'll have to talk about, as Councilmember Bryan brought up, is that we don't have a budget to take on some of these substantial code updates on our own general fund, and so we need to really talk about that in the future. But my hope is to agendize that in the next month or two to be able to start having some kind of conversation, but also to rope in the planning commission to also have them review those ordinances as well. Going back through, we did want to have an economic development meeting this month. I'm still working on that, again, with city staff, really strapped, dealing with trying not to flood and also dealing with the snow. We've had to back up a couple of our projects to kind of have that take priority. So we will still be having that, and I'm working with those groups to set that up. We're also working on a MOU with some of the other cities that we have in Siskiyou County to be able to use their equipment in case ours breaks down. So we have not had an MOU like this before with the other cities. So we're talking to Wairika, and then also Mount Shasta and Weed. I did reach out to them as well, and they're interested in being on an MOU to be able to share different pieces of equipment and what that looks like for liability and cost. So we're working on that. The city manager and I are going to get together tomorrow to go over a number of projects to get everything back online. So working on solid waste updates to get that committee back and rolling, and working on a rate study for our solid waste, and then just kind of having to deal with everything else. We should be having a Boston Globe article coming out for the city of Dunsmuir related to the Cantera Loop spill and how it relates to East Palestine. So we'll be part of that article. That'll be really interesting to come out. And I've had an influx of inquiries about our experience with the Cantera Loop spill, as well as talking to other cities that have experienced that. Thank you to the city manager, to Castle Rock Bottling Company, to the other council members who were able to attend, sending water over to East Palestine. From one city that had to recover from a disaster to another. It kind of unites us across the nation, unfortunately. It's not something we want to be united about, but we are. So thank you all for the time. So we'll move into committee reports, and just with the time today, keeping these brief, but I'll open this up. Did you want to add anything else to the LTC, or?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Any other committee reports for right now? Seeing none, we'll move into approval of the minutes, item number 7 on our agenda for February 16, 2023. Is there any discussion?
No discussion. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Keisler, second by Vice Chair Clarno. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 8, which is our consent agenda. We have 3 items, as I said, tonight. Item 8A is check register for February 11th through March 10th, 2023. 8B is proclamation against child abuse. 8C, report of water discharge change order of $10,000. Is there a?
I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the fact we got to do a roll call, correct?
Correct. Is there a second?
Second.
So motion by Councilmember Keisler, second by Councilmember Deutsch to approve the consent agenda as presented. We'll now move into a roll call vote.
Councilmember Clarno.
Aye.
Councilmember Bryan.
Aye.
And Councilmember Deutsch.
Aye.
Councilmember Keisler.
Aye.
Mayor Lucchese.
Aye. Thank you. And we do have to do roll call votes because there is expenditures and money involved. So just FYI for people who don't know why we do that. Move into item number 9, public hearings. We have none tonight, so we'll move into our old business, and we'll begin with item 10A, which is city council protocols. So we're bringing this back for a second review. I am still working on getting in contact with the tribes that claim cultural significance in our area for a land acknowledgement and bringing some of that additional information forward. I have heard from 2 tribes, but we have several that associate cultural heritage with our area for that, and I'm waiting to hear back from everyone before putting everything together, as well as getting additional information on the history around that. So we're still waiting on that, so we'll probably bring this back. But one of the other things that was pointed out by our wonderful city clerk, Wendy Perkins, is that we have committee reports in here as being submitted in a hard copy format ahead of time. Do you remember what page that's on, Wendy? So that was one thing we had picked up, which is exactly why. we
Yeah,
take
there's a
multiple-
whole section on committee,
Okay,
committee reports. It should be in the, probably agenda section, I'm guessing.
yes. All right. Consent. So right now, our current protocol is that council members have to submit a meeting report no later than noon on Monday prior to the city council meeting that they'd like the committee report to be on. I believe when we first adopted that, that was just to keep people timely and to not have committee reports continue to roll into each other. We have not required anybody to submit a report so far. I know some people have. But do we want to continue to have this, or would we like to amend that? That'll be up for discussion after we go through that. And then those are kind of the two items that we have outstanding on these. So I would probably ask again to have this on for the next agenda, just to give additional time for that and address that comment when we get to discussion. Are there any questions or anything else that council members have about this document before I open public comment?
I just have a kind of point of order. Are we passing it now and then we'll come back with the other adjustment later? So it takes months to get that? We can.
Yeah, I think what I'll ask is just a table for one more meeting to address the committee reports when we get to discussion on how we want to do that. And then just give, like I said, one more meeting so I can get at least something together for the land acknowledgement.
Okay, so we can't do the agenda and then just amend it later?
We could. I mean, that's just gonna be my suggestion when we get to discussion. So if you have a different suggested motion, I'm fine with it.
I have a comment I'd like to make about the land acknowledgement. I heard a very interesting report the other day on the subject of land acknowledgements. And one thing that a lot of people are concerned when it comes to land acknowledgements is that over time they might become stale. Just because you're doing them and it's just a procedural thing. This doesn't necessarily tie directly into putting them into the protocols, but it's something I would like to see. I would like to see, if we're going to do the land acknowledgement, to have, and I know a couple of us brought this up when we talked about it at a prior meeting, is I would like to see either in this room, across the street, in the hallway, a little plaque or something that has some of the information on what this area was used for, or what the land that currently the town sits on was used for. So that way, in the land use acknowledgement, we can have a little, if anyone would like to learn more about this, please go look over there. And I think that would help prevent it from getting stale. So that way, as it moves into the future, anyone who wants to know can just go over to that plaque, look at it, get some information, and learn a little bit more instead of just having the acknowledgement.
Thank you. Actually, there was an NPR article literally that came out yesterday.
I was listening to that, so we probably listened to the exact same one.
I was
So
like, oh, wow,
that's-
this is
yeah.
so timely.
Yep.
It's fascinating. Thank you.
That's what actually brought that into my head, was that in?
Yes, so that could be an option for us, going off of what both Councilmember Brian and Vice Chair Clarno brought up, is we could pull the land acknowledgement for just a separate discussion at a future meeting too, if we want to do that. But I'm gonna go back. Are there any other comments or additional items that you saw in here that we need to discuss and address?
Let me just make sure we're on the same page, meeting. So we're talking about the protocols.
Correct.
In our protocols, I see back here where it says our municipal code and our zoning code.
Which page?
45.
Thank you. I just want to be on the same thing as you so I can take notes.
I want clarification here.
Sure.
As it stands right now, vehicles that are towed from the city of Dunsmuir are creating a hardship on the citizens of Dunsmuir. They're towed 31 miles away to the city of Lakehead. The money goes to Shasta County, not even our own county. And we have our own towing company, top of the hill. Just was wondering how that came about, and if we could maybe amend that so that the people of Dunsmuir.
So you're talking about a municipal code amendment? Because this is
I'm
not in
talking
the.
about if it's a zoning code or rules
That would be under snow removal, that would be part of what we're talking about going forward, right?
So that would be a
I don't know
separate
if you
item.
call them the protocols, I don't know what y'all wanna call it. I wanted to know
So-
why we're going 31 miles to another
So
county.
that's not on topic with the item
It's
at
not in our
hand.
protocols?
No, so the protocols are how we as a city council govern ourselves in terms of behavior, policy, agenda, so that's not in the protocols. So.
Zoning code?
So we reference that we utilize the Dunsmuir Municipal Code of Codified Ordinances, Dunsmuir Zoning Code, but we're not discussing those codes now. This is just a document for the council as a policy document for the council.
So are we accepting them the way they are?
So no, that's not what this item is.
Okay,
This item is just stating that we
Thank
follow
you
the
for clarification.
Dunsmuir Municipal Code. We're not discussing those at this item. That's a separate item.
thank you very much.
So, are there any other questions? All right. Council, or previous council member, Mr. Arth would like to lead off our public comment.
I would indeed, Madam Mayor, and understand I am grateful to council members who actually put together the protocols, because for my years in Dunsmuir, it's very easy for this body to go passive and just do the minimum and not really grapple with bigger issues. So my specific concern is future agenda items. I think the city of Dunsmuir has a housing crisis, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But my recollection is in January with the new council, I had support from two council members, Councilmember Deutsch and Councilmember Keisler, to at least have the city look at the idea of an ad hoc housing committee to address the hundreds of units of residential dwellings that are unused in our downtown area, and the fact that people can't afford to live here. We have a professional study that shows the demographics of the city, the affordability, whether you own or rent, and we have a crisis. So I have the support under the protocols. This should show up as a future agenda item, but every agenda that comes out, future agenda items are blank. So I assume somewhere in the machinations of the leadership of the council, you're not going to talk about this idea until you're good and ready. And I don't think that's faithful to members of the public trying to get you to address important issues. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other comments on the city council protocol item? And again, for members of the public on Zoom, you can go to the reactions tab on the bottom toolbar and you can raise your hand if you would like to make a 3-minute comment. All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and go back to the city council protocols. So it's been kind of presented 2 separate items. So to keep on track tonight, there's the land acknowledgement item, which I think there's kind of a suggestion to take that item and consider it separate so that we have more time to just deal with that and then do the other updates to the council protocols. So we'll start with that discussion and then we'll move to the other topic items we brought up. And so is there a preference from the council on that? Is that something you want to keep in here? Or you want to keep as a separate item to discuss again?
Okay, we're trying to pull this back.
I think it warrants being its own item.
And Madam Mayor, I recommend that since we're bringing it up here, we've only talked about it tangentially amongst ourselves. For anyone who doesn't know what this is, maybe you could explain what it is.
Sure. So a land acknowledgement is a practice that certain jurisdictions are beginning to adopt that adds to their agendas, where at the beginning of the meeting, similar to the flag salute, there's an acknowledgement of the different tribal heritage that occurred in this area. So our area specifically, because of our proximity to Mount Shasta, we have several different nations that claim cultural indigenous significance to the area. And so what the acknowledgement does is it basically is kind of a starting point in terms of acknowledging certain aspects of our history that aren't brought up as much as other aspects. And so it basically opens with an acknowledgement that we're in an area that is culturally significant to certain peoples. And so it's just kind of part of this framework that is taking root across the nation, where there's kind of an acknowledgement of certain things happening in history, an apology for certain things that happened in history, and then an atonement where we kind of move forward with new regulations that take that into account to create a more equitable society, because not everybody has been treated well historically. And so it's not just about Indigenous people or First Nations people. It's also about people of color who have been taken advantage of. For example, for our case with our railroad heritage, Chinese immigrants who were taken advantage of during that time. So that's part of the bigger kind of discussion around acknowledgement around those things. But the land acknowledgement specifically is to the original peoples who were here prior to colonization. And so it's, that's what it is. I hope that was a good synopsis. So
I thought you do well. I know you have a passion for this.
we're getting there. We're getting there today, which I apologize if I'm a little twitchy today. I actually fell on my icy steps yesterday. So also be careful on the ice. So my back really hurts. So I'm trying really hard to power through this today and not freak out, because I'm like losing feeling in these fingers right now. So I'm okay with taking the land acknowledgement and making it a separate item. It looks like there's consensus on that, so we're good to go. So let the record show that we'll be tabling the land acknowledgement portion of the city council protocols to the next meeting or a future meeting when we're ready. In terms of other items, so we're going back to the committee reports. So is there an interest in amending the committee report section to become verbal?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think it's far more effective to keep it the way we're going
Okay.
and have us write reports, because then we'll miss the deadline and not report.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. So we can do that, and thank you to our city clerk for pointing that item out.
Thank you.
Could we keep the written reports in as optional, just in case in the future if we get some overzealous?
Yeah,
Oh.
well, we can always amend the protocols when that
Fair
happens.
enough.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So let the record show that we will amend on,
Vote on that, I assume, right?
well, there's general consensus.
Okay.
Unless someone is, so we'll be amending on page 29 of the agenda packet for the record, committee reports, which is under agenda items, item number 7. It'll be city council members are encouraged to attend and reach out to outside agencies pertaining to mutually beneficial actions and plans. If a council member attends a meeting, a report may be given at the next city council meeting for correspondence to their fellow members. That sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll take out the last sentence, which is reports shall not be addressed in a regular meeting unless submitted in the agenda packet. So I just struck that entirely. All right. Were there any other items in the protocols that I forgot? I know, so to address the public comment, one of the things to point out for future agenda items is that not all future agenda items will go on the immediate next meeting, because it takes staff time to be able to put together a staff report, put together what's going on. And in terms of the housing ad hoc committee, I just want to state that we are in the process of updating our housing element. I believe our city clerk just shared the results from the initial housing study, which was really helpful for us to take a look at. And so I think part of that process is kind of what's being requested, which is looking at goals, policies, and programs for future housing. What we can do is we can reach out to the contractor. I've reached out to them a couple of times. It's Plan West Partners, Inc. is the contractor who's putting that together in coordination with our city staff. And I've reached out a couple of times to see if they need any additional assistance for public outreach. But I will bring up the housing ad hoc option for them if that's something that will assist them in putting that plan together.
I also wanted to say I'd actually, on Tuesday, talked with Madeline Bryan, who's the housing person for the county and already started looking at ways, and she's part of the continuum of care, so I made sure I had my email to her, and so we are following up on it. It's just not through a committee right now, but I am following up with Madeline.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to do that. I'm sorry, my brain hurts. So we do have that going on, so we will bring it back at a future meeting, but I also don't want to undercut our contractors' efforts to basically do exactly what everybody's asking to do. And there is there will be more public engagement on that housing item, so I'll talk to them and see, if that's something that'll assist them moving forward, and or what their recommendation is for that, which I believe I actually asked them about that. I might just need to follow up.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'm thinking a lot about the topic of the public comment on future agenda items. I think it works very well in some ways, but when I was mayor for 2 years, I had 4 different city managers, and at times remembering items that should come back was a burden placed on city councilors. And sometimes you can remember it, like I keep lists, but then sometimes the notes don't fill in, or 6 months come by and there's another urgent need. I would wonder, it's probably more just best to be internal to staff, but if we could get a spreadsheet or list so that maybe between city manager and city clerk.
We're already on it.
Okay, cool. I'd like to see that exist internally. I don't think it necessarily needs to be in here, but I think that would be, to the public commenters' perspective, that would be probably the missing piece, and some things do get lost because of more pressing needs. Not all the time, but occasionally.
Well, there's one way, I guess, of looking at it, which would say that if somebody says we're gonna have a future agenda item, keep a list of them up there and just recognize that that's not saying when the meeting will be, but it's just a recognition of the fact that, for instance, we're coming back on the short-term rentals. I don't know when that'll be coming up, but that's on the line, right?
That's perfect. And I guess to fill it out, I think it works well in the sense that I believe firmly that items ought not to come to council unless they're well prepared. And we have a limited staff, and even our own volunteer efforts are limited. We work or have outside interests as well. So we shouldn't bring items to council that aren't ready, regardless of how long it takes sometimes. But I do think not losing sight of them because of a lack of notes or organization would be good.
I just sent them a thing to help organize stuff.
Justin and I were talking about putting together before I left.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that can be sometimes what happens is, we have a lot going on. Like, I completely just forgot we were going to do short-term rentals until you told me. So I'll make sure we keep that note somewhere. And I appreciate everybody's grace with trying to remember everything. It's not easy keeping all this and keep it sorted. So
because we're doing a lot.
Yeah, we're getting there. All right, are there any other discussion items? Otherwise, we have unanimous support to pull the land acknowledgement item and work on that a little bit more for a future meeting. With that removed, we could approve the protocols today if we're comfortable with them.
That's what I was kind of going for before when I said that. So I move we approve the changes and bring back the land use later on.
All right, so there's a motion by Councilmember Deutsch to approve the city council protocols as amended for the committee reports and the presented changes in the agenda packet with the land acknowledgement item tabled to a future meeting. And the motion was seconded by Councilmember Bryan. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for your patience on that. I know protocols are not super interesting.
It didn't hurt either.
We're getting better at
It
it.
wasn't that painful. We've had some painful ones.
We're getting better. Speaking of painful ones, we're now moving to our other piece of old business, which is 10B, which is a discussion on our public works building.
All right, so I'll start with the move component first, and then go into the longer term planning component. So up until the snow started flying, the public works crew was working up behind the Lions building. We moved in a number of connexes in the middle of the snow. Envirocon, who is UP's contractor, assisted in taking care of some of that work for us because we did not, we were busy plowing snow and they were bored, so I put them to work. And so trying to take advantage of that. But that part has been, I guess the nicest way I could say it is a challenge, and in about every capacity. We've pretty much have been at a standstill for almost 3 weeks. Today we were finally back up there doing more site work, but it's been tough. The weather has not cooperated. Brian and the crew, they've been out nonstop plowing snow basically since the day they stopped cutting wood. And so we are, Union Pacific has asked for a date of when I'm going to disconnect power. I have refused to give that to them because I can't commit to that because we're just behind. And so there's a number of concerns. I mean, thankfully we weren't moved already because it would have been horrible process with all the snow. And that is Brian's biggest concern is how we're gonna work outside and take care of that stuff. And so that's a challenge. I don't know that answer. A roof over our head is what we've been used to, and that's what we should be used to. And it's we're gonna have to go a while without one. And so that's something that we're trying to work on. I do have for the temporary site, we have a office connex showing up on Monday. We've got some rock put in today that all disappeared after it thawed out, and so I'll have probably 2 or 3 more loads come in just to stabilize the site so we can actually maneuver on it. We're putting in shelving, got started today. 2 connexes were leveled, and hopefully we can start packing up and moving tomorrow and probably the rest of next week, provided it's not snowing. So we can cross our fingers and hope it's only rain. That's kind of what the forecast is showing. But yeah, we're basically getting back at it for the moving standpoint. So from the longer term standpoint, that's that train is still moving. It's been a little slower. I'm gonna share my screen, kind of give a discussion on where we're at, and then what we're looking at for our site, and then Brian's here. If we've been talking about it as much as we can, but it's kind of some bigger picture. So can you see my mouse? Yeah. Okay. So right now, I'll show a picture of the kind of the site drawing, proposed site drawing. So right now we're looking at, so this is the Lions building. This is, I don't know if it looks like a little chicken shack. I'm not really sure what that is. Little building, storage building, and then this is the Parks and Rec building. And then this area here has been cleared. We cut down 13 trees, of which 11 of those were extremely unhealthy. And so we were doing forestry work that needed to be done anyway. And we put the connexes up in this area. And so this site here is where we're looking to put the facility. And so I will pull up, let me see if I can find my other.
Next to the pool?
Yeah, to north. I'm gonna pull up my other picture here.
What about that other piece of property by Dollar General?
So, yeah, so that's kind of, since we had that discussion, I got back some pricing, and the estimate was $1 million higher than what we were proposed here. So I can't justify $1 million. And so kind of redirected and said, okay, let's move on. And, purchasing the property might be a wise idea, but in the scheme of how much money we're going to have to spend. So as I mentioned back in February, Union Pacific had pretty much bailed on providing any opportunity for our secondary funding. So I've spent approximately, just for the temporary components of getting us moved, we're right around 48 to 50,000 of that 60,000 authorized has been spent already or in the process of being spent. And that'll get us.
And we're not moved yet.
And we're not moved. That's just the structures and the connexes and rock and, rental equipment. I mean, that's just to get that component of it done. And so this is what has kind of come about as a site layout. So right here, this is kind of the footprint of the community center. This is the Rotary building here. And then this would be the current Parks and Rec office building. And then their shop building is currently underneath this, the proposed site. And so one of the discussions I've been working with the Parks and Rec district and discussion, and that's something that I want further guidance on from the council is, so I did get an initial cost estimate without electrical and without plumbing. And we were at 300, well, we needed to have an adjustment that hasn't, I'm waiting on the adjustment, but we were at 373,000 for that building, concrete and structure installed. And so we will have to have a prevailing wage adjustment for that. So we're probably, with that, we're probably at 4.25. And then we would look at, with that cost, I mean, we still have plumbing and electrical, but I would expect another maybe 75 to 100,000 on that.
At least.
And so we are substantially lower than what.
COVID that on its own, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's gonna be at least 100,000?
yeah, I mean, plumbing, I don't have a lot of plumbing outside. I mean, we do have to put sprinklers in it. So I got them working on that stuff. I just haven't got an estimate on that component yet. But we're kind of, so Pace Engineering, I'm having them kind of do the site layout, and we're kind of taking on the hat as the general contractor and working to kind of piecemeal the parts out to get a cheaper cost.
But we still have to go prevailing.
We still have to go prevailing because
Ouch.
yeah, I know. The classification of a public works
Ouch.
project is anything that is construction related to public funds. So in this capacity, we're using public funds to build this, so there is an impact. But the dollar figure came in quite a bit lower than expected, and so I would be interested in understanding if the council would like to move towards possibly replacing the front building that the Parks and Rec is currently in. I have discussed that with Mike Rodriguez actually this morning, and I'm going to have a presentation at their meeting in first part of April based on that guidance. But really what I would project, so right now I have a 40 by 120 building, and we would just, basically it would be similar to what we have now. We would just have an office space inside for Brian and the crew with restroom, and the rest is all shop space. But what I would look to do to work to help accommodate because the cost is lower than expected, to look to accommodate some office space and a place for them to work out of, and replacing the facilities that are currently there that are, I think that front building was built in the 1920s, so we're 100 years old now.
It's Old 4th Street.
Yeah, and
it is.
It's in really
It's time
poor
to go.
shape. Yeah, and so that's what, if that's something that you're willing to make a modification on, I would recommend adding potentially 30 feet to the front and make it a 150 by 40 structure.
Since we're talking square footage, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Before this potential addition for Parks and Rec, how does the square footage of this proposed building compare to the square footage of the current building?
It's currently 600 square feet smaller, but I am looking at like a mezzanine. So our mezzanine up there is about, I would say it's probably 12, 14 feet wide maybe in the width of the building. So 12 to 14 feet wide by 60. And so I would propose that we put a 20 by 40 foot mezzanine above for additional storage to help. And that area is not fully used in our current building, but I believe it would be more used in this one just because we don't have the footprint on the ground necessarily for a lot of that stuff. So we're essentially 600 square feet smaller. And so part of that would be to, potentially look at, so up in this area over here, we would look at potentially putting our commodities bins and build them into the hillside. And then we could put a cover over that for fairly cheap. The primary concern for the cover would be the cinders. We keep those inside. That takes up, that takes up pretty substantial space in there. And so we would look at doing something outside of the building, but covered to keep them dry.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we could get those out of the building. That would make-
So that's kind of the gain, is we get to gain that space back. Whereas, that's more than, I don't know, what would that space be, Brian? Is that maybe where the cinders are at? Is that maybe what, 20 by 50? 40? Yeah. So that's essentially that's a whole bay inside the building that we're not gonna, if we put them out there and have it covered with a cover over it. And that's one of the modifications I asked Pace to make. And I'm gonna follow up with them after this meeting, but that if that's something that the council would.
You're not gonna have
like
an
to look
inside
at.
bay like he has now?
Not for cinders, no. But they would be covered outside under a, like a commodities type facility rather than inside the building.
Could you point up here the situation with the Gorsuch?
With
The Gorsuch?
Yes, so I am meeting with Steve on Monday. And so this is the pool space here. Mr. Gorsuch's property is over here. I'm not exactly sure where the property line is, but currently he has a house on the back here. I think it's 4201, and then he has a house on the front that's like 4203 or 4205. Both of them are Buckboard Lane, which is on the other side, fed from the other side. So his concern is that there's potential for devaluing his property, but also for access. And so over the years, it hasn't been a fully used operational area, but it has been a government facility for over 100 years, and we're not really changing that aspect of it. And so I'll be discussing with him.
It's been city property.
It's been city property. I don't know how long,
Nothing
so,
changed.
yeah. So one of his, he expressed that you guys all received a copy of the letter, and I'm going to discuss that with him on Monday. And, but his property here, one of the things I need to understand is there's kind of like a walkway there. And I talked to Mike Rodriguez about it, and I'm not exactly sure if that is, so the pool is the rec district. So I don't know if that area there is actually the rec district or if it's Steve's. And so that's one of the things that we need to determine. I did not get that information from Pace, but they have measured everything. So I could potentially find out.
Well, yeah.
What if the corner of the building, because that's what, maybe 15 foot wide in there.
Yeah.
So that may actually be his property. And so there is access from the other side. It's just not from the side that they currently access that back house from.
Yeah, I figured you're gonna talk to him, I just want to get in my mind what he's talking about. That's-
Yeah, so yeah, it's essentially this area here.
Apparently for some time, I've talked to Steve. Since there's no gates or anything on that, where the old Lions Club building is.
Yeah.
The access to the back building, people have gone past the Lions Club and parked on the back side of the Lions Club in that area there to access that house on city property. And that's where because no one's been using it.
I don't think I've ever seen somebody park there.
Yeah, there's been a vehicle parked there.
Okay.
Well, not lately, but there has been.
It's kind of out of the way. It's not directly
tucked in the
visible,
back.
but it's
Technically, it's just a 2 or 3 unit property off Buckboard though. Like, all the other properties on there don't access it from the back.
Right.
They could,
Yeah, I don't.
Theoretically.
Well, again, we're not gonna figure it out here.
I think that, I think that.
I was just more
Yeah.
putting that out as free.
Yeah.
We need to give Park and Recs something. So, I mean, they're gonna be here for a very long time. They're our future.
Yeah.
So I would see giving them the new space, but we need to make sure that we're giving Brian everything that he possibly.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do this, let's do it.
No, I know, and then we're trying to do it right, and that's part of, I mean, I'm just getting a footprint as of now, but trying to, get the site plan set, and so then we can get in the details, and I've been thinking about some of it, and printing stuff out, and then we're gonna have a discussion here, hopefully, this next week, and kind of iron out more of the details of, the internal shop operations. So that quote with what they did provide me was, that's just kind of how we're looking to, project what the cost is gonna be. We still have to go to bid. So it was kind of a courtesy quote to like give us a price range. But that was fully insulated as well, the whole building. So.
Yeah, do we have any other questions right now or clarification? Because we do
I'd
need
like to
to
bring
open
a
up
few
for,
things up, but I'm not sure if we're taking action or not.
I don't believe there's any.
No, I'm just
action
looking for
requested today.
guidance if you want, if you want me to consider that component of it, I'll go ahead and modify
Would be
it.
the only thing for
Yeah,
today.
if
So-
we're gonna consider Park and Rec.
You could open it just first.
Yeah, all right, so we're gonna open public comment before we move into discussion, and so I know we have one member of the public here, but again, those of you on Zoom, you may go to reactions and raise your hand, and you can have 3 minutes on this item, but Brian, you can go ahead if you'd like. I don't think anyone's raised their hand yet, but.
All right, so this is heartbreaker here for me. Hasn't it? Anyway, I'm going to start off with a letter I wrote to Lance Fritz, who's the CEO of Union Pacific. I wrote this back on March 31st of 2022. And a lot has happened since then and now, but it does have a lot of meaning to the situation, I believe. To Lance Fritz, CEO, Union Pacific, I have some questions regarding some rumors about closing the UP yard in Dunsmuir, California. I have met you before on a fly fishing trip. I guided you and other representatives of Union Pacific. My name is Brian Wilson. I am the supervisor of Dunsmuir Public Works. I thought the city and Union Pacific were partners in making Dunsmuir a better place. Now I heard you are planning to take our shop because of an environmental cleanup of the upper Sacramento River that your company created. If there is any truth to this, I wish Union Pacific would be forthcoming in any information to share with the residents of Dunsmuir. The snowplows, street sweeper, and many other important resources to the community are in that building. Let's not forget the impact financially your environmental disaster has created. Hopefully this makes it somewhere other than Facebook. So I sent that, and the next day I received contact from a project manager, Ms. Mancuso. She came and did a presentation for us, and we kind of all got briefed about the cleanup process. Throughout the whole process, we had a committee formed. I think you were part of it. We had meetings and conversation to come about March, and then Lauren left Union Pacific and went to work for Jacobs. And I went to my first meeting with Dustin, and who is the new project, Mr. Brandon?
Yeah, Jim Brandon.
Jim Brandon is the new project manager, and we met. And we talked about the closing of the shop, and he said something about there being a temporary location down in the UP yard at this time next year. And that was in November when we had our conversation. So to me, I felt like Union Pacific was really working with this and wanting to extend the window even out to November to let us get moved. And to me, that's very important because with this last snowfall we had, our equipment was just torn apart. And we have no place now to work on that equipment. I feel like we're doing the community injustice by not having something to fix that equipment. And we're setting us up for failure in the future. I think council needs to somehow extend that lease with UP or get us some more time into a shop where we can fix our equipment. I don't know any other way than asking you guys to try this, but it's very impactful to our community. And I feel responsible for all that equipment down there. And right now the plan is next week, it's all going out to go sit in the dirt out behind the Lions building with no cover on it, no protection, nothing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Are there any other comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move into discussion, and thank you, Brian, for that. And we'll go to Councilmember Bryan since we had a couple of items. before
Yeah,
we
I
went
guess
into-
it had two categories, but based on public comment, thank you, Brian, I have three. The first one was just, I've been involved with this somewhat from the beginning, and we've gone back and forth and some places. And city manager's also aware of this. It's still very tight when you look up there of all we're trying to fit in that space and the way the hill works and heavy equipment getting up on the hill. I guess I definitely want to get a very, very clear sense that this is the site plan before we move forward.
Yeah. So this one, actually, I requested a modification because currently they have it 20 feet away from the wall at the swimming pool. So
Yeah,
that creates
I'd like
it.
zero setbacks if possible.
Yeah.
Or like
So our
3
current setback is 10 feet because next to it is zoned R1. And so we have to have a 10-foot setback.
Can't we seek an exemption and do a 3 foot, so we'll need that space on the other side?
You can request a variance,
Yes.
but you don't typically want to do a variance because if you're not holding yourself to your own rules, why should people be held to your
Well,
rules?
maybe we need to revisit the rules.
So we would need
I
a
agree.
zoning text amendment.
I think before we let dead space that's needed on the other side exist on the back side, we should get serious about the reality of the situation. My
Yeah.
personal opinion on the setback. But
Okay.
if we can't, I'm willing to hear the other arguments, but I'd love to see a comprehensive plan of that. I hate taking buildings out, everyone knows this, but I see that it's the best case for the building there. I would like, as we're doing this and spending the money, we definitely want to do it right. I think we're all on board with that. So just the idea of adding Parks and Rec, I love it, but that area is seen by all the people that pass through Dunsmuir on 5, it's on Dunsmuir Avenue. I would like whatever faces and addresses the street to have really good form. I would love for the Public Works building to also not just be a metal box if possible. I don't know what the cost difference is, but I do think that if we can't build something that's durable, beautiful, and something that Dunsmuir is going to use for hundreds of years, we can't expect other people to build correctly here. So, I see this taking, unfortunately, more than next winter to be built if we're going to do it right. So I don't know what sort of contingency plan we have, in the meantime. On that note, I'm supportive of whatever we can do to figure out a solution with Union Pacific. I know at one point in time, the South Yard was floated as an idea. They've moved the building there for us. It probably isn't, but I'd be willing to revisit it. And then I don't know if you have any updates on the financing, because that's a big portion for me.
Yeah, I didn't quite get to the financing side of it. So Blake and I have kind of looked at, the options we have, and we're really limited on what we do have for financing. Essentially, we have to go through like a lease purchase kind of process. And part of that reason is because of if we don't go through lease purchase, then we have to probably go to a vote. And then that elongates, there's a lot of other rules in place, or if we're going to bond money, that it just elongates the process. And so we found a way. So a company called Holman Capital, they were down at the league, and but it's, they're legit, and they're financing other projects in that capacity.
Lease to own is different. I've talked extensively with the founder or CEO guy at Holman. His business model is to own it forever and lease it back to the cities for the most part. So he will own it.
Lease purchase option, yes. And that's what we've been discussing with them, or we could do an outright borrow, so I need to have some clarification on from a legal standpoint. I'm not totally tied into it, but the fees are not, like, if we went to bond money, we'd pay 70,000 in fees, and with them, it'd probably maybe 5,000 to 10,000.
What about just a typical construction loan from a bank?
Well, we have thought about that too. We just have not gotten to the banks yet.
Okay, well, I'm happy to share some thoughts on that as well.
Okay.
We haven't talked about it too much because we didn't know the number.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm trying to get some numbers so we know what number we're talking about right now. The number sticks in my head is about $1 million. And so as outside of this component of the project, there's a couple other additional improvements I think we should do to city facilities. One of those is put a new roof on the community building, because they're already there, and I would proposed that that roof would match the same color roof that we put on the Public Works building. And then also new flooring in this building.
Oh, well,
Oh, before we get a little bit too far away, we're just on Public Works building.
Yeah, so-
So I appreciate the conversation and that we are trying to be economical of when we have these professionals here to do that, and to keep us on track for tonight.
Okay.
Otherwise, we could spin into every building we own, and I
Right.
don't want to do that today.
Well,
So I'm gonna go to Vice Mayor Clarno, and then I'll come back around to Councilmember Bryan.
can I request a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, we can do that. So we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. We will come back at 7:35. Is that what that is?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Bonnie and Loki, welcome. I guess you were gonna try and do public comment, but you missed the major public comment, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had an unexpected delay.
Well, that's okay, I'm glad you're here though.
How many more do you got?
Dustin, do we have any?
No, 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 you're good. I'm talking about.
Do we have any
We're
open
trying,
meetings?
we try and get a couple bicycles.
Not yet.
Oh, you still working that one, huh? Well, I'm just thinking, if you end up with one, that could be really good.
A little kid bike.
What's that?
Yeah, no, we need little
If
kids
you do
like,
get
like
a
a
trainer,
trainer.
that could be what Public Works takes, it's equipping up to work
Little
on.
kids for the.
Yeah, so there's some rules around that, so.
Never mind.
Oh, yeah,
But you never, yeah.
Hey, you ever run across any like Vespa?
I had one Greta.
It's gonna be expensive. I know. That's why I think it's funny when people want the city to do everything, and I'm like, you realize we charge prevailing wage, you don't want the city to do everything.
But, one baby bottle, 8-ounce baby bottle full of gas. You have one baby bottle full of mixed full of gas. That way you had a little bit to go.
It's like you were actually gonna agree with her, and then it's like.
That's pretty good, man.
That way, if you had already had that, plus you had the fuel for
That was
one
weird.
tank, so.
Like, you're just rude.
Because I was thinking about it, contentious things she said. We were all like,
Oh, is that, oh, that's the picture?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great comment. I was gonna be like,
Right on,
actually,
dude.
we already talked about this, so I, you
Doesn't,
know.
were you thinking
remember back in the day, we had this heater, it'd be like, vroom, 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 and then whoa, the trains, and
Okay,
this
we're on
room
mute
had
now.
some sounds.
Are we
man.
good?
All right.
All right, again, we will return to order at approximately 7:35 PM. And we are in the discussion portion of the Public Works building. And so I believe we left off with Councilmember Bryan, if you'd like to finish your.
Yeah, I'm mostly done. There's just so much involved with this. It's a bigger project than Dunsmuir's undertaken in a long time.
I know, I'm,
So I'd like to hear from other counselors as to what their thoughts are on it. I've mentioned a few things that are important to me. If we do it right, and best we can, essentially.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back over to Councilmember Heisler. I believe you had brought up that you are supportive of adding the Parks office to the building. Do you want to elaborate on that, or is that just?
Well, I think, echoing what Matthew says, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. I mean, this is a big undertaking. We're trying to create a facility that ain't nobody can kick us out of ever again. But it's got to be functionable, it's gotta be perfect, it's gotta be, I mean, if we're gonna do it, let's do it what we need. And I think you had mentioned that the front of the building, it needs to be aesthetically enhancing. We need to do something to where, you know, this is the new, you know, this is the city, we're not little old Dunsmuir, we're Dunsmuir. And our park and recs out there in the front, their park and recs is, you know, a lot of people don't realize how much they're involved, but they're involved in everything from the ball field to Tall and Dolly, from the swimming pool. They're involved in Easter egg hunts and everything else, concerts in the park. I think it's up to us to look out for them in our future, and as well as our city employees. All in all, we're just trying to benefit our town. Now, I was part of, we can build Sears shopping centers in 100 days. As long as you got money, as long as you got all the permits and all the government, and no CEQA and no FEMAs and all, you know, I mean, as long as everything is right, it can be done. But then again, you got a lot of stuff. By the way, 11 out of 13 trees was bad trees anyway. So it's about time we did something up there. And that Lions building, you know, it ain't gotta stay there. Rotary could use a new room too. So community storage, I don't care. I'm just saying, the cost alone just to revamp and get rid of the rats that are in that building is gonna be phenomenal. So if it could go and everybody could be accommodated, that'd be the ideal. That would be the ideal, because the Rotary, by maybe making a place for them to put their stuff, my God, from supporting of the Brewfest to pancake breakfast with Santa Claus. I mean, they do a big part for our town. So I'm supportive of a building, you know. I'm fixing to be a general contractor. I want to make it big and bad and better, you know. But, you know, it's all about the budget. So whatever dollars you see that we can squeeze, and if there's any, Brian's got a point. I thought the railroad was going to kick down a little bit. Now they're not kicking nothing, just
Nothing.
kicking us to the curb. That shit ain't cool. I mean, that ain't right.
I know.
So, but anyway, and I'm assuming that we have exhausted all resources trying to find somebody to kick down, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Grants.
there's no, when it comes to building a public building, there's not a lot of funding outside of maybe fire that can actually get grants for buildings, you know? It's really tough, especially on
Don't say
the,
that. No kidding.
especially on the timeline we're looking, like,
Yeah.
if we want a roof over their head, even if it isn't fully finished, if I want a roof over their head by November 1, we have to make some pretty quick moves in order to make that happen.
given the status of their current offices, I assume Parks and Rec isn't eligible for any grants that could help us out with this.
Tear it down.
I don't know. That would be that's a whole nother conversation. I haven't got into them with them yet, but
So I'm gonna go to Councilmember Deutsch and then I'll come back to Councilmember Bryan because we've been quiet.
I actually do think that his idea about getting rid of the other building really is something that should be looked into. If you imagine the amount of storage space that's in there, and you kind of put that aside for a second, and then you said, let's make a bigger building now and give ourselves more space, you could put that in there and say, you know, we've got a space for the Parks and Rec, and we have a space for storage for, you know, city events. But I think that might be something to open that up and should be considered, because it's a nasty building, just like the Park and Rec's one in front is. Rats are, you know, constantly doing that's their restroom. The other thing, though, I just want to kind of in my mind get clear on this. I kind of feel like, and I know we're not pulling the trigger at this moment, but it looks like we're now moving, a train is moving, if you will, towards the idea of this being our permanent home. Is that right? We're kind of putting aside the idea that there were other viable options in terms of real estate.
yeah, I mean, the only other viable option we had, it came back $1 million higher, and most of that's retaining wall. And so this is the best, next best. Yeah, that was kind of like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate. I mean, I had it laid out, but we can make this one work.
That's what I'm saying. I guess right now what we're putting into our heads is this is the track we're on right now, and how do we get there?
You know,
Right.
the footprint of the Lions building alone, if you were to take half and make 4 community
Lockers.
No, what community organization storage, whether it's Rotary Lions, whatever.
So,
and the other half, that could be where Brian gets his cinders.
so we're looking, so like all of the Connex containers, we will probably not use, we'll have space in those after we're done, but you know, so that's not a problem to provide extra storage.
In case nobody know or seen it, these guys are taking 2 little tractors and picking up those big ass Connex things, and one's going backwards, one's going forward. They got guys going like this. It's like beep, 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 and they are relocating these huge little tractors. It's
So
pretty.
I'm gonna bring us back to.
It's pretty funny though.
I'm gonna go to Councilmember Bryan and then Vice Mayor Clarno.
I just like to move that we authorize city manager maybe up to, I don't know, 5,000. It should be a lot less than that. It should only be a couple $100 to get a professional building inspection of the front building, so we get a sense of whether it's salvageable or not. In my experience, rehabbing existing buildings is so much cheaper than tearing down a building new, but I'm willing to be corrected.
Lead paint. You don't need that. You can already know.
Well, there
Yeah, we're already
are
building the building.
grants for remediation for lead, so I think it's a good idea to do an inspection of the front building. I would support that. I'm supportive of the Parks office space. I think we all kind of seem to be on the same page for that.
And while we're doing that building, can we just increase the budget and get several of our old buildings that we have questions about inspected? Was that not the time?
It's technically not the item that's on the agenda, so I don't want to make a decision on something that wasn't duly noticed to the public, but maybe
We're
that's.
concentrating on getting our guys moved.
Yeah, so I think maybe what we can do, and I know that the city manager has wanted to bring back a city facilities item to the council as a whole. So I'm gonna wait on that one, but I'm gonna go to Vice Mayor Clarno.
So I've just got a couple things I want to run through really fast. And then one thing I think I want to pose, might be a few minutes of discussion. But one, you know, if we're talking about sharing the building with Parks and Rec, we need to figure out a utility split. If there is a 10-foot space between the building and the pool, and we are sharing this with Parks and Rec, I think that we can find a use for that 10-foot space.
I already have an idea.
Cool, yeah, that would be good.
That way they're not jumping off the roof into the pool.
Yeah, right. I just want to reiterate what everyone else here said. Aesthetics is important. I know you've got a slide for us to show us here in a minute. The other thing I'd like to kind of go over, equipment makes noise. Just kind of have a plan for noise mitigation for the residences right there. I think would be, if we have that in place before that comes up, I think that would be a good, that would put their mind at ease. And then I'd just like to tie in our whole conversation about the railroad. with an earlier conversation, the railroad, especially with everything that's happening right now, say East Palestine. If, I know you mentioned the Boston Globe, which is one of the largest newspapers left in this country. If some of this discussion of how UP is stiffing us on an environmental cleanup project that has been occurring happened to find its way into that article
Hundreds of years.
for hundreds of years, I think that might be a way to start putting a little pressure on them and
Every
Yeah.
railroad.
and every railroad to take this kind of stuff seriously and say that they promised they'd help us. They reneged on all their promises. So if we could start, if it sneak some of that into that article, it might make for a little better article.
I'm not saying that's any question, but.
So I do usually believe you catch.
I'll leave that up to you guys and I'll maintain my relationship.
I was gonna say, we play the really fun game of we would like a Path to Mossbury balls.
Yeah, that's true too. And I'm a
but
firm
I
believer that you
understand.
catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, but sometimes they, yeah.
When you're working with
Sometimes
some of those
using
things.
the big fly swatter.
So I'm just gonna summarize everything that we brought up. So it sounds like there's unanimous support for making sure that the frontage of the building is architecturally sensitive to the surrounding area, but we need to have a functional facility. I believe that we're all supportive of providing parks and rec and office space in an expanded building, although we do want to take a look at that front building, just to make sure that, that can't be converted or upgraded to, on a cheaper, I guess, scale. We do need to do the zoning text amendment, so I think that's something we'll have to bring up to Rico.
It's, Rico and I discussed it, so the motion for the zoning code amendment is coming forward. And
Great.
that parcel specifically will be as a government, it'll be government facilities.
Institutional zoning.
Yes.
Well, if everyone's on board with that, I didn't quite hear, I am very adamant about not having the 10-foot space if there's any way possible, if there's agreement.
Yeah, well, that'll come back to us with the zoning code text amendment.
To be fair, I've struggled to get them off the 20-foot space. So I just told the engineer that we have to have 10 at a minimum.
Yep.
Or at a maximum.
Yeah.
And so they're looking into it. If that means I have to put my footings another, instead of 2 foot deep, I put them 4.5 foot deep, so what? I'll do it. It's concrete at that point. That's cheap. But the space we'll never get back.
Yeah, we really need it.
Yeah, so we have the zoning text amendment coming up. We want to make sure moving forward at a future meeting related to this, that we get the finances down and that goes to the finance committee for consideration as well.
Yep.
The item of community storage has come up, so hopefully there's something we can kind of see moving forward for that, because that is a big can of worms to open, because we need to make sure that if we are going to offer community storage, we have policies and guidelines related to those on who gets to use it, maintaining it. So
Right.
that's going to be part of that discussion. And then obviously putting together a memorandum of understanding that if we are providing the Parks and Rec office space, what does that look like for liability, maintenance, utilities? So those are the 7 points that I have so far. Does that encompass everything?
Oh, my God, yes.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to add that 8. I'd like to also look at that, at the Rotary, what we're calling right now the Rotary Building. I mean, that really, I think, could open up a whole bunch of space if we decided that could go as well.
And that has to go.
It has to go in order to fit on that site.
It's a new driveway,
Yeah, it's going.
so.
Oh, it's going.
Yeah.
It's going.
It has to.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
So I don't want to pick architectural facades today.
No, I kind of want to show you no, I'm not asking for that. So
Yeah.
can you expand that a little bit, Wendy, please? Left a little bit.
To the left.
Try that.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, thank you. All right, so I just kind of wanted to throw a couple of, so this facade here, one of the things we discussed was, and we're concerned about that as well from a staff standpoint, is how do we make sure the front facade looks, like here, we were talking about doing like river rock or a stone. Darn it. That was not what I wanted.
Cool.
That was not what I wanted to do.
Control Z.
Hold on. All right, there.
You really need to update your browser.
Hey, my browser's, yeah, it's full. It's been busy. And
Yeah,
so,
that's cool. Like
so
that-
like that one or
That would
like,
be them, and that would be behind it would be the
yeah.
city.
So I would kind of, I wish I haven't been, I was looking for one that looks similar to what we had. Oh, here's one right here. All right. So like this building here. So like it would be like if the Parks and Rec, not quite that wide, but the front section where Parks and Rec would be at a shorter elevation because they don't need the elevation. It would, and then the one side would have a garage door in it and then would have an office space, and it wouldn't be quite that wide, but that's kind of a similar thought process of what we're looking at.
So I don't want to get into architectural. I have opinions
I
on
know.
this, and I'm going to try really hard not to have any right now, but I will talk to you about it.
Okay.
So, going back to our list, is there anything else that I missed? So I think are we clear on direction? And I
I think
will
so.
share my notes with everybody that I took here.
Yeah,
Great.
I had most of those already
All
thought
right.
of, so.
All right, thank you so much. So I'll close this item for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I do not need that anymore, that's Dave's. We'll move into, we have no new business, and so we'll move into future agenda items. As I said before, I'm gonna be meeting with Dustin tomorrow to kind of list out everything that we have and try to get back on track with some of our other projects that we had wanted to talk about in March, but got put on the sidelines because of snow removal and potential flooding hazards, which we are still at risk for potential flood. So just for tonight, if you have items for future agenda, please email me so that I can start that list and make sure I have that. I did take a lot of notes today, and I have a lot of reminders to myself, but also just emailing Dustin, Wendy, myself, if you are like, what's going on with
Do
something.
we know when we're gonna do the short term? Is that coming up soon?
I think Rico's working on it.
I need to have a discussion with Rico because there's a couple things that came up, but I wrote it down in my notes to follow up with Rico on it because I think him and I talked about it in January, but I haven't talked
The
since then
scheduled
about
time
it.
to revisit was April, so we're not.
They're about to go down.
We're about there.
Yeah,
All
because I
right.
know he's working on the zoning amendment, and I don't remember if, did that make it on planning commission this month?
We need, yeah, we'll cover it tomorrow.
So
There's
we
a
can
couple
talk
of
about
planning
that, so-
items we need to circle
that one's
back
coming up
on,
too.
because we have 2 big planning grants that are still open too, we have to figure out. So, all right, if there's no other future agenda
I
items,
would like a clarification, or just to double check that you said we were thinking about looking at snow removal in May, April or May at the latest.
yeah, I
Right,
think.
so the intention for that is so we have time to have public engagement and then adopt the policy and then communication before the next season.
I just want to check, because I know there's constituents who are concerned about snowmaking, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that, for future reference.
Yeah,
And that's where Dave's thing about
Hmm?
taking the tows all the way down south would fit into that discussion too, is snow
yeah.
removal.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say we want to get to it in April, but you never know, we could get another week or 2 of
Yeah.
precipitation. I'm gonna just say precipitation, and we have very limited staff, and we appreciate them, and so it can be hard to get to
So-
some of these items,
So how do you, Madam Mayor, how do you do that? When you go to the window and it's snowing, do you say it's I mean, how do you say? it?
Precipitation. It's precipitation.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All right, there's a motion, is there a second? There's a second by Councilmember Bryan. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion
It's
carries. We are-
precipitating.
Precipitation.
It's precipitating instead of snowing.
Oh my gosh.